So in 1918, Pueblo City Schools had a superintendent named John F. Keating. John F. Keating, shown here with a big-ass mustache that has swallowed his mouth. He has no mouth whatsoever. It's just a mustache. John F. Keating was a Buckeye Methodist. He came from Ohio, which is okay. It's okay that you come from another state, but you need to commit to staying here forever. You're going to work, play, live, and die here. So it's okay if you come from a different state. It's okay if you come from another place into Pueblo. I think the important thing is that you're going to stick it out here, and you're going to make Pueblo work for for you as best as you can to make it for yourself, but also for everybody else. If you're only going to come here, take a shit ton of money, change everything, piss everybody off, and then leave, fuck that. Why would anybody ask for something like that? I'm not actually for sure of John F. Keating, if he stayed or if he left. So he's a Buckeye Methodist, which is okay. He could be a Buckeye Methodist, but he comes from a different perspective, a different background. He's got religious and political views that I don't agree with. He's pro-war. He's all about World War I. He loves, all the gas attacks and all the people that died of mustard gas and just all the heinous shit, trench warfare, lines and lines of men battling it out for just inches of land. He was in favor of that. And for what? What did we fight in favor of? What did we gain from that? There's some arguments that Hitler came from the devastation of World War I. After World War I, they made Germany pay so many reparations that it crushed them, and then from those ashes came Hitler. And more importantly than that is you have teacher training schools. I don't know if all of America knows about this, but teachers go to these teacher training schools, and they don't teach the soon-to-be teachers how to be experts in their fields. They don't teach you, if you're going to be a social studies or a science or an English teacher, they don't teach you more about your craft. They don't teach you how to be a better social studies teacher. They don't teach you any more social studies. They don't teach you, anything about your craft. All they're teaching is classroom management and life skills and life this and that, just a bunch of basically just dumb shit, just how to manipulate people on a bunch of theoretical bullshit. And then the hierarchy of the educational system, even though you're an adult who's got a Bachelor of Arts, you've already graduated college, they still talk down to you. They're still the dictator and everybody else is powerless. It's not democratic. You would think in a teacher training school that all these adults want to be teachers. Why not get each and every adult to teach each other? Then we're talking to each other, we're teaching each other, we're learning from each other. It seems so obvious on the face of it, but instead of doing that, instead of treating us like adults, instead of being respectful towards our humanity and our sense of self, they'd rather crush it, be the dictator, and treat us all as if we're a bunch of kindergartners. And that to me is quite alarming. Teacher training schools come from Prussia. All the education, the PhDs, the universities, all that comes from Prussia. Prussia was the Nazis before the Nazis. Prussia consolidated all these German-speaking countries and created Germany. Germany today started out by Prussia taking all the other German-speaking countries, over like 100-something German-speaking countries. So if they're teaching the adults like children, if they're still treating the adults like children and the adults aren't using democratic practices, which there's some notable ones, such as everybody has a right to their own opinion. So you get up, here's my opinion, and then I would require that you have reasons for your opinion necessarily. I guess you don't really need reasons, but why support something if you don't have a reason for doing so? So you get up, you say this is what I believe, you give your reasons for it. We all have to tolerate that. We all got to listen to it and we got to tolerate it. That's a democratic practice. The minority get their say, but the majority get their way. So at the end of the day, we're going to make a decision collectively based upon the body. And then we're going to execute those decisions. So making decisions as a group is democracy. Respecting each other's opinions is democracy. So he was a tyrannical troll. He was a Buckeye Methodist who was in favor of fascism and militarism and right-wing tyranny. He was a tyrant. That's what he was trained in teacher training school, to be a tyrant, to get everybody to comply. And he thinks that's education when he can fill your brain up with as much information as he knows. He can impart his wisdom on to you. And while you can learn some faults and some ideas like that, ultimately we have to live our own lives. And we also have our own belief system and perspectives. So I believe in a constructivist worldview. Every person gets to decide for themselves how they want to live their lives. Every person gets to choose how they want to pursue their own happiness. We need to be training our students how to become good adults who can live in a democratic society. So we need to be training them to speak up, to speak their mind, to question authority, and to make collective decisions, how to get into a group and make collective decisions. But I'm not going to expect the students to do something if the adults aren't doing it. The adults aren't even doing that. So the few things that I know about John F. Keating, he's from Ohio. That's fine. I'm from Kentucky. He's a Methodist. That is a little bit alarming. Religious folks, I think, are deluded. There is nothing, it's voodoo, hullabaloo. So I don't understand what you're going on. I would like to know, do you believe in science? Do you believe in is there any semblance of reality that you actually believe in? Or are you totally just on another world, just in your own head, on a cloud, you're just in a cloud over Timbuktu somewhere. But I know that he was in favor of World War I, and that he was a fascist, tyrannical despot. He's an autocrat, a monarch, a rule by one. He's the superintendent. Everybody's going to listen to me. That's the fucking problem. Tyranny is the fucking problem. Tyranny and fascism. We don't need any more tyranny. We don't need any more fascism. We need more democracy. We need a higher turnout rate. We need a higher graduation rate. We need to have communities that are working together, that have collective. We all want the same thing. Safety, freedom, love, support, food, water, clothing, shelter, jobs, a safe place to raise our children, plenty of opportunities for our children, plenty of schools, good schools that our children could go to and learn new skills and crafts, transferable skills, so they can get out into the workforce. And they got to support themselves. We live in a capitalist society, so they must support themselves. These are essential. Without doing these things, some sink, some swim. This is dog-eat-dog world. We don't have a safety net for people here. You slip off, you're fucking homeless. You slip off, you're living out in the woods, begging for change. And that's got to change. We need to care about each other. We need to have compassion. Michael Moore interviewed that one woman from Iceland, and she said she wouldn't come to America if you paid her, because we just don't give a damn about each other. There's people that don't have health care. There's people living out in the street. People have a lot of issues, but we just go right on by. If Americans are such individuals, if their lives are doing good, if they're okay, they don't care about anybody else, and we can't care about everybody, but the government should. The government should, so we don't have to. So real quickly, the problem, I was trying to figure out exactly when did the schools start failing. They are sitting there, front page of the Pueblo Chieftain, schools are failing. The state has already taken over 3 of our schools. They've been threatening to take over our schools for quite some time. Now they got a hold of 3 of our schools, Bessemer and K-8 Academy, Heroes, Bessemer, and Risley. I saw one report, and it was supposed to be a 5-year thing, a 5-year accountability gap or some shit. So the state said, you got 5 years, Pueblo, to get your schools together. And to get your school's shit together, get the administrators' shit together. So they said 5 years ago, but then I saw a report in 2015 that said 5 years before then, which would, push it back from 2012 to 2010. So when did Pueblo schools start failing? I know that Span Elementary was closed in the 90s, and then it was reopened, and then it got closed right back again. So it was closed for 10 years, open for 10 years, and now it's being vandalized. It was vacant a couple years ago. I'm not for sure if we figured out what are we doing with Span Elementary. What are we doing with that building? If you look at the bigger picture, just look at the bigger picture. I mean, turnout rate has always been abysmal. There's only been 2 or 3 of the last few elections where it was over 50%. But in 2000, 2001, turnout was 21%. 2005, turnout was 30%. That's not a majority. You have to have over 50% to have a majority. But people who don't give a shit about democracy, they're not alarmed about that. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to participate. They have the jobs. They have the money. They got the power. They want to keep it. the exact same. They want to keep all that and help their buddies and their friends out, but they don't give a shit about you. And that's a fucking problem. So if you look at the 2010 U.S. Census numbers, 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 kids in Pueblo are poor. 20 to 25%. If you look at our free and reduced numbers, it's even worse. 68% qualify for free or reduced lunch. So poverty. Poverty has been a staple for Pueblo. The city of Pueblo, the county of Pueblo has always maintained a poor population. All these Christians around here, and yet poverty has not been solved. We can eradicate poverty. We can get land reform, we can have a universal basic income, but more importantly, we need the political will. We need people who say, you know what, I'm sick of this fucking poverty, and it's time for us to do something different. It's time for us to change this. I'm sick of this everybody being homeless. Let's give them some goddamn homes. They need places to live. 22 houses. We have 22 empty, vacant, abandoned houses by absentee landlords that just board up their house. They're not renting it. It's a blight to the neighborhood. They're not helping. They let the weeds grow up all over the place. These absentee landlords, 22 empty houses per homeless person. All it would take is a coordination. Just get the homeless people into these houses that nobody's using. So if you look at the big picture, the city of Pueblo has had poverty forever. The city of Pueblo has been enduring poverty forever and homelessness forever. How many other corrupt, immoral, bullshit societal things do we allow which is just unacceptable? It's unacceptable that we have people living on our street every day. Every day they have nothing and they see everybody with everything. Every day. Everybody walks past and not giving a shit. That would be traumatizing the first day. Having nobody give a shit. Where do you go? If you're homeless, where do you go? I hear the homeless shelter is full. So where are you supposed to go now? And some fucking pricks, instead of actually solving the homeless issue by giving the homeless, homes, they'll blame it on them. It's their fault. Which is easier to do, because if you can blame the homeless for their problems, then you don't have to give a shit, right? If you care, well, then you might have to do something, right? You might actually have to vote for the people that give a shit about homelessness. So here's a list of the superintendents from 1986 to 2017. Right now we have Charlotte Macaluso, but let's go, this is the modern era, but 1986 I added this. I found out the 2 superintendents of the 90s. So here is a comprehensive list, 1986-2017, of all the superintendents that we've had in the postmodern era, some in the modern era. So in 86 to the summer of 1991, we had Edmund Vallejo. Edmund Vallejo was the superintendent of District 60. He was the first Hispanic superintendent. The first Hispanic. The first. Half of Pueblo is Hispanic anyways. So that's remarkable that the first superintendent that was Hispanic was in 1986. Pueblo itself is named after a Spanish word, which means village or people. So Edmund Vallejo, for 5 years, was the educational czar. He was the Fuhrer of everybody's children in Pueblo City. So Edmund Vallejo for 5 years, and then Leonard T. Burns for 2 years. Leonard T. Burns was superintendent for 2 years. For some reason, they bought out his contract for $200,000. So he had another year or two. They seem to be doing 3-year contracts. Joyce Bales had 2 3-year contracts. A 3-year contract, that's a 3-year term. It's an arbitrary term. I don't know who came up with that, but when you sign that contract, now we're stuck with her for 3 years, or we have to pay them $200,000. So Leonard T. Burns was the superintendent for D60 1991 and 1992, the school year, so it would go to the summer of 93. For 2 years, Leonard T. Burns was the superintendent. So, and even though the school board did not like Leonard T. Burns's And even though the school board did not like Leonard T. Burns, they didn't like the direction he was put in the school, they didn't like his attitude, they didn't like his tyranny, they didn't like his maybe pro-democracy stance, I don't know what the fuck it is, but the school board did not like Leonard T. Burns. They went to get rid of him, and they had to pay him $200,000. We had to do the same thing with Constance Jones. Constance Jones got fired last year, but she got a severance package. So when she left, we gave her a shit ton of money. I don't know if she got $200,000 for nothing, because he tricked you all into signing a contract, $200,000 for Leonard T. Burns. So Edmund Vallejo was superintendent for 5 years. Leonard T. Burns was superintendent for 2 years, and now we're at Henry Roman. Henry Roman, he had worked 30 years in Pueblo, so he's local, but he had been superintendent for 7 years, from 1993 to 2000. He was actually a superintendent longer than Joyce Ford Bales was. Joyce Ford Bales was from 2000 to 2006. John Covington, the Alabama jailer, John Covington was the superintendent for 3 years, 2006 to 2009. Kathy West was superintendent for 1 year, 2009 to 2010. And that's when the 2015 report that said 5 years ago, it would have landed on Kathy West's head. Is Kathy West to blame? Is it because of the 1 year Kathy West was in there? Is that the reason why we got Pueblo has failing schools? Is that the reason why we got so many failing schools? Because of Kathy West? I'm not going to say that Kathy West's administration was a resounding success, but I think she was a great interim. She was there for 1 year, and she stepped down, smooth transition of power. We didn't have to pay Kathy West $200,000 to step down. So I am overly excited because she was in there for 1 year, which is fine. How much, damage could you do in 1 year? And then I also like the West administration because she stepped down. A nice, smooth transition of power. Nice, smooth. She approved of the next superintendent, Maggie Lopez. And Maggie Lopez was superintendent from 2010 to 2014. And Maggie Lopez had spent $7.4 million for Global Partnership Crooks, LLC, some New York City-based corporation that was supposed to boost learning at 6 schools. Instead, 5 of the 6 schools, the performance dropped. And even though Margaret Lopez had retired in 2014, she is currently the superintendent of Eagle County, Colorado, in northwest Colorado. So Henry Roman, he was in there for 7 years. He's probably the one who's been in there the longest. So if you just want to say who's been in there the longest, who has had more years under their belt, who has more of blame than Leonard T. Burns, he was in there for 2 years. What damage could Leonard T. Burns have done? Kathy West was in there for 1 year. Henry Roman, on the other hand, he was in there for 7 years. Joyce Bales was in there for 6 years. John Covington, 3 years. Constance Jones, 2 years. Colorado Springs, Margarita Lopez, 4 years. And right now, Charlotte Macaluso, 1 year. Henry Roman closed down Span Elementary, and then it was reopened under Joyce Bales, and then it closed under Maggie Lopez. So is it Maggie Lopez's fault? Is it Henry Roman's fault? Is it Edmund Vallejo's fault? Personally, I think it's John F. Keating's fault. John F. Keating is the one that established the dictatorship, the fascism, the autocracy. He's the one that filled the role of superintendent, the autocracy. He was superintendent of Pueblo City schools before it was one district. So he was kind of a unifying voice between District 1 and District 20 city schools. It's also interesting how we get all these outsiders. There's more than just these, but Joyce Bales was from Tennessee. John Covington is from Alabama. Constance Jones was from Florida. How come we don't have any Bessemer Gutierrez's or Belmont Jones? Why don't we have elevated local folks here? If a superintendent is doing a good job, they will make thousands of new superintendents. The litmus test for if a superintendent or a school system is successful or not is whether or not the students know the material and whether or not they succeed in life, whether or not the material was actually useful for their day-to-day existence. And unfortunately, for people that come from the outside and have no intention of staying, they don't give a shit if half the school drops out. Under Joyce fucking Bales, she had a 50% graduation rate. 50%. How is that a success? That's not a success. And then the numbers that they want to brag about is adequate yearly progress. Adequate yearly. So they were tops when it came to adequate. And their adequacy was tops. Their adequacy was top-notch. Their mediocrity was the best in the land. So we got Tennessee Bales, Alabama Covington, Florida Jones. Like I said before, it's okay if you come from some other place in Pueblo County or Pueblo City, but by having a house here, by living here, by having a family here, by having, wife, kids, job, by playing here, working here, living here, dying here, that shows me you're going to stick it out here for a long-ass time. You're going to stick it out here, and when half of your high school and half of the school system is dropping out, when the graduation rate is only 50%, you're going to have to deal with the ones, hopefully the dropouts will find their way. But maybe they never do. Maybe the stigma of not having a high school degree always keeps them under. So Joyce fucking Bales, she can tolerate a 50% graduation rate. She don't have to live in the city that she created. She don't have to live in the city that those youngsters, that was 2000, right? She was teaching in 2000, so that would make them all, so in 2000, the kindergartners would be 22 years of age right now. 22 years of age and, to 6 years, 28. So the people that she taught are now in their 20s. They are their adults. The young 20s. So to truly see the effects of Joyce fucking Bales, we would have to track all those students that she taught and then see how well they did. What percentage of the students, of the young people, the children in the city of Pueblo did well. So take a look at all those people in their 20s, the people in their 20s that went to Pueblo City schools. The people who are in their 20s was educated by Joyce fucking Bales. And my guess is, just like with lots of statistics, right, that you're going to have some successes and you're going to have some failures. The chronic problem of poverty, the chronic problem of tyranny and not enough democracy, these are structural issues that the city of Pueblo have always had. 30% turnout rate, 21% turnout rate, no democratic legitimacy there. That's tyranny. It's tyranny. And Joyce Bales was a fucking tyrant. No bones about it. Absolutely she was. She forced 3 people from the school board to get recalled. She forced them to either get recalled or pushed out or retired. But 3 school board members who disagreed with Joyce fucking Bales, she had the majority of the school board, she just didn't have 100% compliance. She's a tyrant. She's a fascist. So whose fault is Pueblo's failing schools? Whose fault is it? Out of all these superintendents, personally, the problem's always been here. But mostly Joyce Bales. I think Joyce Bales is to blame for all of Pueblo's problems.